Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and it's that time of the expansion cycle that I'm going to go over and review effectively the entire expansion of Darkmoon Faire and determine whether it was a success or a failure. We've done this twice before, basically every 4 months. We took a look last at Skullman's Academy, whether it was a success or a failure. In that review, we determined it was a success and did a lot of good stuff. In Ashes of Outland, we also did the same and determined it was kind of a failure, mainly due to the Demon Hunter launch just being so atrocious and dominating the meta the entire time. So I thought I'd go through again with Darkmoon Faire and just go through every single class, evaluate what every single class did during the expansion, and determine, was the expansion good at shaking of the meta? Did it create a good experience? And all that good stuff. So let's get into it. Let's take a look and see if Darkmoon was a success or a failure. And one important thing to note when going into this was Darkmoon Faire was the first expansion ever to have a mini set in it. If you want to exclude like the adventures from like Galakrond's Awakening, for example. You had the mini set come in halfway through it where it injected like, what, 30 something cards, and that's going to happen every expansion going forward, and we'll talk about that as well. But Darkmoon Faire, when it launched back in November, introduced the corrupt mechanic, basically requiring you to play a card that costs more than the prior card. Like, so let's look at Insight here. If you play a 3-mana card, you would corrupt Insight, and then not only would corrupt draw a card, it would discount the card by 2. So that was the new mechanic, and one of the big themes of the Darkmoon Faire was the reintroduction of the old gods. We had Yogg, Y'Shaarj, Cthulhu, and N'Zoth all come back in different versions, and as you can see here, they're quite a bit different than the old ones, but had a lot of the flavor in them. And overall, for the most part, Corrupt didn't see a ton of play throughout most of Darkmoon Faire. The meta has been very aggressive, and it's a very slow strategy, and for most of the cards, the payoff isn't there. But as we'll go through the different classes, you'll see some Corrupt cards pop up. They weren't a complete bust, but definitely somewhat underwhelming. And in terms of the old gods, that's where the biggest disappointment comes in terms of like the big introduced mechanic, right? The old gods just didn't do a lot compared to like their prior selves, the original old gods. Y'Shaarj probably popped up the most, especially with like clown strategies. We see it getting Ticketus back, and Ramp Paladin used it quite a bit. N'Zoth, complete bust, like resurrecting a menagerie strat. There's just not the support for it. The minions to bring back just didn't really make the cut to somehow get to 10 mana. It was just not great. Only saw a bit of play in like Ramp Paladin, and a lot of those lists cut that there as well. Yogg popped up here and there, but a lot of people thought, Yogg's gonna be nuts. Pyroblast your opponent to death, cast spells, but it's 10 mana, you got to cast 10 spells, and again, a lot of these long-term strategies don't pay off in the current meta game. Cthulhu saw a decent amount of play as well, but mostly in like spell-centric strategies like in Priest and Mage. Shaman to extent, saw some control strategies with Warrior. Nothing really tier 1, but some tier 2 and 3 decks there. But overall, the old gods were pretty much a big disappointment to the majority of us. We were hoping for more from the nostalgia point of view, but it is what it is. At least they have seen play, and as rotation occurs and maybe the power level drops a bit, the old gods, and plus they'll get more support depending on what is added into the game. It's not complete, doom and gloom for the old gods. They still might have some time to shine, dominate, do some good stuff, but for now, I would say they've been pretty disappointing. So that's kind of the neutral perspective. Let's go through each class, see what they did, and then at the very end, we'll evaluate whether, this expansion was a success or failure. And when evaluating each class, basically what I'm going to do is I'll mention what mechanic they introduced to it, or what strategies they introduced to it, what the standout cards were, and what the standout decks were. So starting with Demon Hunter, they try to introduce this outcast mechanic where like you play some of these kind of cards where it would like buff stuff, and didn't really work out. And they also introduced a lifesteal strategy with Il'gynoth, and well, that did, as we'll talk about in a second. The standout cards for Demon Hunter were Il'gynoth, Bladed Lady, Illidari Studies, Silt Stepper, and Dreadlord's Bite, which got nerfed. And then the standout decks for Demon Hunter were Soul Fragment DH, Lifesteal OTK Demon Hunter, and Aggro Demon Hunter. And only one of these decks was brand new, that being Lifesteal OTK. Soul Fragment was already top tier coming into this expansion and became even more top tier and led to getting nerfed with like Blade Dance getting nerfed, Shard Shatter Mystic getting nerfed, as well as Lorekeeper Polkout. There was a bunch of nerfs that happened to Demon Hunter. And yeah, Dreadlord's Bite got hit, so Aggro Demon Hunter got hit as well with Voracious Reader. So Demon Hunter was extremely top tier, was very hated very early on in Darkmoon Faire, and then has been scaled back, has been a reasonable class, has decent archetypes, but nothing really too brand new outside of Lifesteal. But overall, I'd say Demon Hunter did relatively well in this meta, wasn't oppressive outside of the or first few weeks until it got nerfed, and has been in a decent spot ever since. With Druid, they introduced a bunch of spell stuff. We had like Lunar and Solar Eclipse, Umbral Owl, Cenarian Ward. They also introduced a Wind Condition in Greybow that absolutely did not work out. And mostly it was just additions to pre-existing decks. The standout cards for Druid were Arbor Up from the mini set, Solar Eclipse, Cenarian Ward, popped up in a lot of Highlander lists, as well as the Corrupt Dragon here did some work. So overall, Druid had a lot of decent decks. You had like the Token Druid, you had Guardian Animals Druid, Clown Druid was an early favorite, but kind of fell off. And then Highlander Druid, we saw rank 1 Legend Highlander Druids that were built around the spell package. And Druid had a ton of good archetypes, was very solid throughout the entire expansion. And, you know, with the Arbor Up stuff going on, looks pretty strong going forward. I would say Druid was definitely very powerful and very successful, but for the most part, didn't really create any new archetypes for the most part, just kind of supported what already existed outside of, I guess, the Clown Druid deck. Hunter had a bunch of beast stuff added. There was this Tonk Death Rattle package added to it, and then there was like the secret package with like Rin's Rifle and Petting Zoo, and those are the two cards that are basically the standout from this expansion. I can't really put Tonk there. I love Tonk, it's super cool, but the deck just wasn't really viable at like competitive levels at all. The main standout decks was like Highlander Hunter and Face Hunter. Those are the main decks that really did work, and they were both nerfed. They were both nerfed pretty early on in Darkmoon Faire, and Hunter's kind of just been a fringe class ever since. There's some decent stuff you can do, but overall it's way lower on the pecking order than any of the other classes, and really did not come up with too much new outside of the Death Rattle stuff, which again did not really work out, at least not yet. There'll be time for it to shine probably in the near future. The Mage, they introduced a bunch of secret cards like Oaklist and Sage and all sorts of stuff like that. Rig Fair game, we saw some spell Mage stuff put in there with like Deck of Lunacy, just try and high roll with random crap, and Elemental Mage was kind of forced with like the grand finale, but that never really took off. The standout cards for Mage would be Rig Fair Game, Sage, Ring Tossed, Imprisoned Phoenix, and Conjured Mana Biscuit, but there were a lot of Mage decks that did a lot of work throughout this entire expansion. Never really top tier, but really good. Reno Mage, Secret Mage came back and had decent win rates across the board. Spell Damage Mage with the new Imprisoned Phoenix did really well. Mizaki Mage really got a big boost from Conjure Mana Biscuit, turning that into a realistic deck. And Cthulhu Spell Mage even saw a decent amount of play. Play all spells in Deck of Lunacy, just go for it. It's not top tier, but it's a pretty solid meme, and overall, I'd say Mage had a good amount of diversity, a lot of different stuff to do, even brought Secret Mage back to standard. Whether you like that or not, that's that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, Mage was pretty successful in its introduction of stuff, and maybe we'll see Elemental Mage take off at some point if the meta ever slows down, ever. Paladin saw the introduction of like a bunch of dude stuff like Silverhand Recruit. It was okay, but didn't really take off. It's seen some fringe play here and there, but more helped Wild with like Thraxian. Librams became even better. It's more Libram Paladin, whether it be Pure, which was really good, or Broom Paladin, which became even more nutty. And the standout cards for Paladin would be Libram of Judgment, Hammer of the Naru, High Exarch Urel, and Red Skill Dragon Tamer, with the addition of Crab Rider, brought in the era of the Cheese Paladin, the Ramp Paladin. That's one of the biggest standout decks that saw High Abyss Allura got nerfed, and had one of the highest win rates for any card in the mulligan on the coin ever at around 90%. I mean, it has to be. I can't think of another card. And of course, the other standout decks in Paladin being Broom, Libram Paladin, the Penflinger one, and then Pure Paladin. Dude Paladin saw a little bit of play, but overall, I just can't put it at the same level of these three decks. For Priest, we saw the return of Res Priest mechanics. Great, and yes, it did do very well and does well in standard and wild, of course. Spell Priest got a lot better, got a bunch of mana cheat to go with it, which just enabled a lot of disgusting stuff. And well, life in general for Hearthstone players became worse because Priest became better. The standout cards we saw with Rally, where you could resurrect like Nazmani and Sethic. Palm Reading, insane card, generating a spell, discounting your hand. Nazmani giving you tons of mana cheat as well. Blood of Gahoon just being like the standout to get Res Priest, just this ridiculous res target that could just get out of control in a hurry. The main decks that we saw stand out was like a Lucia Priest, where you just literally ran a Lucia, Cthulhu, and a bunch of removal spells. Super toxic, but effective. Control Dragon Priest, which was around before, still basically around with a Lucia in it. Miracle Priest, built around Rally, Sethic, and Asmani, as I mentioned, did pretty well. And Resurrect Priest got even better with the additions to it and was very viable. It saw a lot of play in like tournament play. It was a really good tournament deck. Not as great on ladder, but of course, you guys know there's always Res Priest on ladder. Next, we saw Rogue, and honestly, it didn't get that much, but Rogue was already insane going into the expansion. Aggro Rogue became just bonkers after the mini set with Nitro Boost Poison in particular. Combo and Secret Rogue still remained OP, and Edwin ended up getting nerfed throughout this expansion. That's how good Rogue was. It finally got Edwin nerfed. The standout cards from the expansion was Prize Plunder, which was a sleeper card to many, including myself. Nitro Boost Poison, and then Foxy Fraud and Swindle were just crazy. But overall, not really any new archetype from Rogue popped up as like a tier 1, tier 2 deck. The standouts being Secret Rogue, Combo Rogue, Weapon Aggro Rogue. All those decks existed before. They were all really good before. They just all basically got better. In particular, Combo and Weapon Rogue just got absolutely crazy and remain crazy today. Shaman saw Evolve Shaman return in a big way, which led it getting nerfed really quickly, because whenever Shaman gets good, it gets nerfed because people hate it. We also saw some like spell, like corrupt stuff thrown in there, but overall, the additions to Shaman were pretty meh. We saw the standouts being Cage Match, Custodian, Revolve, Grand Totem, Izor, Storm Strike, and Dunk Tank. And the decks that really stood out to me for Shaman were Evolve Shaman, which got nerfed, Totem Shaman, and Enhancement Shaman. I don't think any of the control strategies really paid out because, well, you just can't play control in this current metagame. And overall, Shaman pretty weak throughout the entire expansion, outside of when it was dominant and the best thing ever with Evolve Shaman until Bogspine Knuckles got nerfed. But overall, yeah, Shaman, it needs a rework, and we're seeing the start of that with the core set and the hero power rework, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with Shaman going forward. We saw Warlock, which didn't get too much new stuff. It was mostly like additions to Zoo and control strategies. There was like the new legendary spell Deck of Chaos that did pretty much absolutely nothing, and they got Ticketus, one of the most polarizing cards in Hearthstone history, that enabled their control strategies to have a ridiculous win condition in deleting decks. So the standout cards for Warlock were Wicked Whispers, Hysteria, Minari Mosher, and Ticketus. And the main archetypes that succeeded for Warlock is basically Zoo, and like you have your Ticketus Warlock, whether it's like a pure control strategy or Galakron. Yeah, basically that. Warlock's been in a pretty rough state throughout the year in Standard, and we'll have to wait and see what comes next year. But Jiraxis, I think, is bringing Warlock back in a big way. And lastly, we have Warrior. Warrior didn't really see any new archetypes pop up, but Warrior was extremely good going in the expansion and got some good stuff that made it very strong as well. ETC being meta, there was like this whole rush package that didn't really work out outside of ETC, which gave a new win condition of Warrior. They introduced like this whole menagerie thing with like Watley and the new weapon. That didn't pan out whatsoever. They had like a taunt card that didn't work out. Basically, the existing archetypes got strengthened. We saw the standout cards being ETC, Nitro Boost Poison, Minefield, Sword Eater, and Barricade, and the standout decks for Warrior being ETC Warrior. You had Tempo, like Enraged Charge Warrior, Pirate Warrior, Control Warrior, Big Warrior, a lot of stuff. And there's even like Cthulhu Warrior, and there's a bunch of other Warrior decks. Risky Skipper enables a lot of busted stuff, and of course the control package in Warrior is really good. And of course Bomb Warrior insane as well. So Warrior was really good, very diverse, just didn't really have anything new. And that's kind of like the summation of Darkmoon Faire. Darkmoon Faire basically solidified pre-existing archetypes, made them stronger, didn't really bring too much new to the table, but I don't think that really was the intention. And we saw a ton of different decks get nerfed or just be extremely meta throughout the entire run of Darkmoon Faire over the past 4 months. And overall, I would say Darkmoon Faire was a success. There was a lot of good stuff for a lot of different classes. Whether it was enjoyable to face, that could be debatable, but at the end of a standard rotation, everything gets tired. Everything seems worse than it is to face because you're sick of it. And I think for a last expansion of the year, it was relatively successful. I wouldn't call it a failure. And the mini set was a glowing success. The whole mini set, I loved it. The pricing of it was great. It shifted up the meta. There was no crafting, like pre-theory crafting stream to ruin the meta before it came out. I love that. We might make a video talking about that type of thing if that happens coming up for the next expansion. But, you know, I think overall, I'm very happy with how Darkmoon Faire turned out. I think the RNG aspect of a lot of stuff came down. I think Hearthstone's in a good spot going forward. Skullmance was a good step in the right direction. I think Darkmoon Faire is a great step in the right direction. And as long as we keep along this line and get away from ridiculous expansions like Rise of Shadows and Descent of Dragons and the botched Demon Hunter launch, Hearthstone's in a good spot, and I'm really happy with how things are progressing. So, overall, Darkmoon Faire is a success, gets the thumbs up from me. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.